Well, maybe we'll just get going. What do you think?
Yeah, jump into it, please.
Cool. So no real crazy intro or anything here. Alan, I think we spoke a long time ago when I was at Trust and Will, but and much like anybody else, I think I knew the story just as you were telling it to me, but most people didn't know, I think, as you were posting content online through LinkedIn, that you even were working somewhere else. I think everybody always thought you were a financial planner just running a business. And I think that says something in itself. Just the fact that you're able to keep up with content. So we'll dig into that and kind of get into your cadence and how you're creating that. But I figure a good place to start is just to say maybe what that transition was like, when you decided to become, little backstory, when you decided to become a financial planner. You were sitting at Raytheon, you were like, I understand these benefits. I'm reading a little bit, I think I can help people. What the trigger was to make you start building your business and what happened. So why don't you at least start there, and then I'll get into the marketing questions.
Yeah, for sure. So appreciate the invitation to come speak to you guys. Always happy to share knowledge, whatever I've picked up along the way. So a little backstory on me. This is actually my third career. So I started as an engineer right out of college. Worked in engineering for like 5-6 years, and then decided to go to school and get a part-time MBA as like a professional development thing. And as I was sitting in those courses, it was like the first time I was exposed to accounting and finance and economics. So it felt a little bit like looking at the source code of the Matrix. Have you seen that movie? Like understanding like, oh my God, this is how the world works. So I was like super intrigued with it. And, I was like, okay, I want to go in this direction. So made a pivot to corporate finance and, did that for a few years, I guess almost a decade. And, it just, for me, like the corporate jobs weren't super fulfilling ever. They paid really well. And like, yeah, I got like promotions and pats on the back from bosses and stuff. But, adding a few pennies to the corporate bottom line just wasn't like, I didn't want that to be my life's work, like the culmination of 40 years of effort, like a few pennies on the corporate bottom line, that just didn't do it for me. So I was always like searching like, okay, is there something better out there? And, the whole time I was interested in personal finance and kind of researching on my own. And it was really COVID, like in the middle of COVID, everybody had a lot of time to sit and think about, life, and people are like in their mid 30s or dying. And I'm like, oh, wow, like maybe I need to, find something sooner rather than later that I really enjoy and I'm passionate about. And I don't just like go through the motions every day. So kind of took an inventory of my skills and my abilities and my interests. And I'd already started the CFA curriculum as like way back in the corporate finance roles. And I decided, through the help of some mentors like Cody Garrett, the other people running solo RIAs, I was like, holy shit, like this is actually a viable business. Like I don't have to go work for Edward Jones to be a financial advisor or something. And I was like, I can actually just start my own company and start onboarding clients and kind of learn as I go. I'm already starting off with like a good knowledge base. So that's what I decided to do in 2020. So finished up the CFA curriculum, got that credential, and then basically immediately launched into my financial planning practice, which I ran on the side. I was still working a corporate finance job at Raytheon for about 15 months. I built my firm on the side just to make sure it was going to be viable and it was growing. And of course, like I was the breadwinner, so I couldn't just go down to zero income. So yeah, it was a difficult time. It was a big challenge to kind of juggle both. Fortunately, I was working remotely with the corporate job, so I could, as long as my job duties were getting done, I could, kind of juggle back and forth. But yeah, it was all about time management for me and just being very disciplined about time blocking and what I do when and things like that. So that's kind of my backstory. I originally started with the niche of aspiring early retirees, the FIRE movement, but for several reasons, I could get down a rabbit hole, but they're a challenging niche to get to come over to the financial advisor side. So in the last couple of months or so, I recently kind of re-niched to aerospace and defense employees. So being a former engineer, I'm very detail oriented. I feel like I can speak their language and things like that. So it's going pretty well. I've been targeting that niche on LinkedIn, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, and just like something you mentioned in your story was, did you decide to be a financial planner? Did you say before you went to Raytheon? So you were already working in that direction, or was that something in the middle while you were there in the last 15 months or so?
Yeah, it was really while I was there, I would say late 2020 was kind of when I made that decision that, okay, this is the path I want to go down. So, yeah, I mean, from the time that I decided to the time that I actually cut the cord, I mean, it was over 2 years. So it was like a big, took a long time. It was a long time in the making, I guess you could say.
Sure. And then creating that content the whole time. One of the things I was most interested in, let me know, obviously, what you can speak about or can, I imagine, whatever you're comfortable with by all means. Was there any pushback from your company while you're actually posting about you growing a firm? You actually posted an article that I really liked, which was something that I was going to pinpoint in terms of a marketing focus, which was the article you wrote about Raytheon benefits, which is HSA, right, after tax, and I forget what the other thing was, but key points. If any employer offers that, I think that's a great article to write. It is employer specific. Did that just kind of manifest itself, or was that kind of fell in the plan when you, I guess, were working there, decided to be an advisor and started working with colleagues, or kind of how did that situation play out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to answer your first question, I got permission from Raytheon like before I even started, like opened the LLC. So I'd heard some stories about people that they start posting on LinkedIn and then their job finds out and they don't like it and they get canned. So I was like, well, I don't really want that to happen. So, basically told my boss, hey, I'm thinking about doing this on the side. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. No problem. Just clear it with legal. So they basically wanted to make sure I wasn't like consulting with Lockheed on the side or something like that. So it was like a very rubber stamp, like, yeah, you can do this. So save that document away in a safe place and basically had kind of full license to pursue other business activities. So that was great. I was fortunate in that regard. Um, as far as the Raytheon benefits article, I'd seen some stuff on Raytheon, like some people target tech companies and like, hey, here's an article I wrote about Microsoft equity comp. And a lot of the stuff in there is just very generic, but they just put Microsoft all over it. And I was like, well, that's not that hard to do. And it kind of demonstrates expertise at, I'm familiar with this company and their benefits. And, if you work there, you should probably talk to somebody who knows their benefits rather than somebody who doesn't as an advisor. So yeah, I had the benefits booklet because I was an employee and just kind of skimmed through there and was like, okay, here's like the big things that at least when I was working there and I was nerding out with people on finance, coworkers, like nobody knew about investing the HSA. They were just spending it all, the same year. And that's just one example of kind of underutilized benefits. So, kind of bringing awareness and attention to those company specific benefits, I think can be huge. One other thing that I did on LinkedIn, like I wrote a blog post about it, but this is just kind of a general LinkedIn tip, is that I think LinkedIn likes keeping people on the platform. So if you can copy your blog post and put it into a LinkedIn article, I think the algorithm really likes that a lot more than like sending somebody off site and saying, hey, go to my blog. So just keep that in mind. If you can host it on LinkedIn, that's even better.
I do agree with that. I guess it depends on the person, but I don't click anything anymore. I don't go anywhere. I'm not. I don't. I don't want to. I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Just maybe I'm just lazy. But it was interesting that also you launched so quickly in terms of being able to make that transition. It sounds like from when you decided to be an advisor. What was the onboarding process like? Was it a lot of Raytheon employees, the people you were working with that saw you posting and coordinated? Did you happen to get friends and family? Like, what was your build look like in the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually started out the gate with 3 employees. My parents' advisor was retiring and she was very generous in kind of recommending me to meet with her clients. And she knew based on our conversations that they'd be well taken care of. So, was slightly profitable kind of immediately. So that was a huge help. I kind of would have been, struggling for a while without that. It was really, it wasn't former coworkers. I wasn't reaching out to friends and family. I didn't personally like that approach that, is part of the industry. I know that works for some people, but I'm not exactly like a cold calling kind of guy. So I did a lot of content marketing. I'm a member of several Facebook groups where people, it's like non-soliciting, but people ask questions and then other people share expertise and just naturally, if you provide a thoughtful and helpful comment to somebody, that naturally they usually like go look at your profile and, oh, he's an advisor, yada yada, kind of works itself out naturally. So picked up a few clients in that manner. I did have some former coworkers from like past roles reaching out to me on LinkedIn, like, hey, I see what you're doing. I'm interested in, retirement planning, whatever it is. So worked with some of those folks. I did some one-time plans last year, just to kind of generate revenue. And I didn't really like the one-time plans for multiple reasons. I could get down a rabbit hole on that, but they help fill a gap with revenue for a while. So yeah, to answer your question, it was just kind of a smattering of different sources, fee only network, wealth tender, like all these different places. I can't really pinpoint what's worked the best for me. It's kind of a shotgun approach.
Yeah. Do you mind digging into if there is anything to dig into in terms of Facebook groups? I've heard it multiple times in terms of Andy Panko, I think, is one of the best examples I have of knowing that he, pretty much runs through Facebook. Obviously, we see a lot of him on LinkedIn, but I think his money and his, profitability really comes from those groups. Would you say that it's just you spend X amount of time, you get X amount of people, how you're finding the right groups? Was there anything that pushed you that way to get some results? And, I guess as a topping question, it sounds like nothing's shown itself at this point to be so lucrative that you can dig in it 100%. Would you say that's correct as well?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, if I found something that was just like lightning in a bottle, I would do that. I would spend all my time there for business development. But yeah, it's really hard to, if it's coming from a smattering of sources, it's hard to spend more time on one than the other. But yeah, Andy Panko's group is probably the best one that I've found. And again, it's like a very no soliciting zone, but it's kind of sharing information and being helpful and providing value to people. So yeah, he built his entire business by building that Facebook group. So I mean, he went from 0 to like 40 clients in, I don't know, year and a half, and basically shut the doors. So that's a really unicorn success story. I wish I could replicate that. But yeah, his group is awesome. I actually learn a lot there as well. And just the general like Choose FI, which is a podcast focus on financial independence. They've got a Choose FI Facebook page. So, kind of helping with the early retirement concerns that people have on that one. There's also another one called Fat Fire. It's focused on like, very high spending financial independence. So that's another group as well. But yeah, I would say that's probably the top ones. Cool. It's definitely a delicate balance because I can rationalize like, yeah, I'm spending time on these Facebook groups, like trying to generate business, but also, how you get bored, you just start scrolling Facebook, and then before you know it, there goes like 45 minutes. So yeah, it's hard to thread that needle on where the business development ends and the I'm just bored, so I'm going to scroll Facebook is.
That's a really good point. I think whether you're time blocking or not, you still really have to have your mind locked in, because once you're in social media, like it's easy to bounce around.
Yeah.
And a lot of the content I've really liked or seen, I think the most of on LinkedIn. Are you creating content specific? Are you just on Facebook? Are you just responding to those groups and treating it like that? Or do you repurpose content in a few different places, such as like a Facebook page that people go back to, as well as your LinkedIn page?
Yeah, good question. So I do repurpose a small amount of content. Like when I create a post, my intention is I'm going to put it on LinkedIn, and then, I will cross post it with like my Facebook page for my business, and then I'll cross post it on Twitter and probably shorten it up a little bit. But if I feel like it's not really soliciting, but it's like more of an informational, like educational post, oftentimes I will post it on like Andy Panko's group or, the FIRE group if it applies to those folks. But that's probably like maybe 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10. Because a lot of my posts are just like observational or entertaining, and it's like people aren't really going to get value out of that. But if it's like, hey, here's how to execute a Roth conversion, like step by step, like here you go, Andy Panko's group, like somebody might find this useful.
Sure. And I have to imagine at this stage you're creating everything yourself, or are you getting any help?
Yeah, right now I'm creating everything myself. It's been a journey on LinkedIn. That's been probably my best platform. But when I started out, everybody says that writing's a skill and like you get better over time. And I didn't really believe that. I was like, well, my writing's not that good. I'm just going to do it anyway. But I go back and I look at like what I posted a year ago and I'm like, man, that sucked. Like I can really like improve this a lot and repost it and recycle it. So yeah, that's definitely the thing is you know, you just get better over time and you follow people that are doing really good things and you see kind of like how to format posts for maximum engagement and readability, things like that, and you kind of learn the tricks of LinkedIn and online posting in general.
And are you very strategic, or how are you doing content? Because you are working full time and doing this all the same. I think, as I mentioned kind of right at the beginning, is that nobody, I didn't think, even know that you were, or at least realized that you were working full time as well. Were you time blocking weekends, obviously young kids? What did your schedule look like to be creating content this consistently?
Yeah. So I find myself like with the most ideas very early in the morning, like immediately when I wake up. So a lot of times I would get up like before the family, you know, I'd get up at 6 in the morning or whatever and just write for an hour, or at least like kind of brain dump ideas and then flesh out the posts, you know, the next day or the following day. But the biggest thing for me is like always having a notepad like on my phone of like ideas, because if I think about something when I'm driving or I'm in the shower, it's like I don't want to lose it because it's a good idea. So I'll just, you know, write down a sentence and then flesh it out like, you know, again the following day at 6 in the morning or whatever. There were a lot of weekends where, you know, I would go to a co-working space and hey, I'm going to take 3 hours. I'm going to work on a financial plan, and then I'm going to you know, spend the last hour just like knocking out 3 or 4 posts. And one thing that's really helped me a lot is scheduling posts. So there's a lot of different tools. Like I use Buffer, but there's a whole bunch of different ones that can do that. So for me, along with the time blocking, you know, if I can schedule 4 posts, you know, I don't have to worry about it for another week. So it's not like I'm sitting down every single morning like, oh, what the hell am I gonna write about today? So it really helps prevent that writer's block, I think, if you can do several at once.
And it looks like you're stepping into graphics, or have been for a little bit. Are you on Canva, or what are you using to create those your pictures?
Yeah, Canva's awesome. I mean, it's just super easy to use, like even repurposing PDFs and customizing them. But you know, just finding like a format that you like with the colors and the fonts and stuff, and then just replicating that over and over, like educationally. I find that those have gotten a lot of engagement and people like those. A picture says 1,000 words. So really, if I'm putting together like an educational post, those help a lot. So yeah, I would highly recommend Canva to anybody.
Yeah. And one thing that you've been mentioning, or one thing that I've seen and I've experienced, especially at Greenspring, was especially the ideas and content generation, all that stuff becomes a lot easier, I think, when you know benefits of a company really well. So the fact that you're at Raytheon, obviously there's other companies, you meet one employee, you get to talk to them, you dig into their retirement. You know, we're working with somebody right now who has SARS benefits, they have HSA, they have after tax, like lots of conversations to be had. What do you do with the 401k? There's like an 8% match. How do you play that against your SARS benefit? Golden handcuffs until 65. What if you want to get out at 60? But when you can have those conversations that you know what everybody's thinking, I also think that becomes really powerful. And it's a little bit, you know, I think, Nick, you can attest to that. And I've seen Anthony Ruffalo tagging specific companies, because after you talk to enough people, you realize you know their benefits, you can speak to them. That is a very powerful thing, not only from a content perspective, but once you actually get them on the phone, then it's like, oh yeah, I know all your stuff. Have you been doing this? Have you looked into this? You can talk to somebody that they didn't even think about. It's just such a powerful thing to do. A lot of things that I, you know, push, if there's anything, is to say, obviously we're always trying to create content, but I always try to say is that for new advisors, if we could, the most successful people, I think, get into a company, find a few employees, and at least gets you going, or snowballs or something like that. Obviously not the easiest thing to do, but you know, if it happens, it could build a career.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you know, being able to point out those things before the prospect or the client even asks about them is huge. Couple other things on the, if you don't mind, if I talk about niche marketing a little bit, specific to LinkedIn. So a book that I read recently was called Uncomparable. It's by Kristen Luke. I think that's how she pronounces her last name, but it's the Advisor's Guide to Niche Marketing, and she's actually given away a whole bunch of free copies to RIAs. So if you just go Google Uncomparable Kristen Luke, you can sign up and get a free copy delivered to you. Now, it is a sales pitch for her marketing agency that that does niche marketing, but I mean, there's a ton of great information on there if you want to niche and use that. I use those ideas. One of the other things that's really helped me is, I'm sure a lot of people on this call have noticed that LinkedIn is like, at least for me, the last couple of years, it's been like all my new connections are just other advisors, and like we're like somebody posts and then we do like an echo chamber, and it's like, okay, I'm not trying to market to other advisors for my advisory services. So how the hell do I get my target audience on the, on my network and connections and following me and things like that. So that's where kind of like Sales Navigator can really pour gas on the fire. Sales Navigator, for those who aren't aware, is a paid upgrade to LinkedIn. So it basically just allows you to search for people at specific companies with specific amount of experience or specific titles. You can filter by geography. I think it's around $100 a month, but it basically allows you to send unsolicited messages to them, like 25 a day, to that list that you've narrowed down, which is great because you can make more connections. You can kind of market to your target audience. But it does take a lot of time, right? Like crafting the messages and picking out who you're going to connect with. One tool that I've recently found is called Copilot AI. And what it does is it sits on top of Sales Navigator and it automates the whole outreach process. So you basically filter a list in Sales Navigator. You say like, okay, I want Raytheon and Lockheed employees that have been at their jobs for more than 10 years, and they've been on LinkedIn within the last 30 days. And then I port that list over to Copilot, and it takes care of the rest. So you set up like an automated messaging sequence. It'll send a connection to the person first. If they accept, then like, however long you want it to wait, like an hour later, thanks for the connection. Here's an ebook I wrote about Raytheon employee benefits. I hope it is useful for you. Things like that, right? So it can really help you with the outreach and kind of take the manual component out of it. So it's basically doubled my follower acquisition, I guess, over the last couple of months I've been using it. So, I was getting a certain level of followers per day, and then it just increased with kind of the forced outreach of Copilot. But I haven't exactly seen traction as far as prospects or people interested in my services yet. But if I've got 600 more eyeballs on my content that are in the aerospace industry, it's like it's only a matter of time before one of them is like, hey, life event, I need a financial advisor. There's this guy who specializes in people just like me. I'm going to contact him, right? So trying to kind of play a long game with that and really gain a lot of followers that are not financial advisors. So be happy to, send you over to the business development folks at Copilot if anybody's interested in it. It's a great tool. I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, we may need to tap that because that sounds very interesting. Do you know, is it approved by LinkedIn, or because they have all those things where they warn about non-automation and using these outside services? Do you know, is it actually approved, or is it just something you don't advertise to LinkedIn or let them know that you're using?
I don't know if it's formally approved. When I spoke to them, I was a little bit concerned, like, hey, am I going to like get my LinkedIn account shut down for spamming people? And they basically said,
if you blast 1,000 of them or something, like you got to be careful with that stuff, right? I mean,
yeah. And I think the biggest thing Copilot does is they only target second degree connections. So you're not sending connection requests or messages to somebody who's like totally random. It's like, hey, we've got a mutual connection. Let's connect. And apparently that's like a safer way to, I guess blanket the earth with messages. So yeah, at least that's the safeguards that they've got. They've said that they haven't had anybody blocked from LinkedIn using their service. So whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But yeah, it seemed like a pretty safe bet. I think Nick had a question. Who created my website? So I had my website done by Cobalt and Sapphire. It's just a very small firm. They built it on WordPress, and I think I paid like $2,000 for it. So, pretty good deal, and I was very happy with their web development. One thing that I will say about them is they didn't really help with ideation or creating like what words to put on what page. So I really had to kind of generate all that myself, and then they developed it according to my my vision.
I imagine $2,000. That's pretty solid, though. Guess it depends what you want for consulting, but yeah, 2K is, I would imagine, a very good price. Although you had to put some legwork in, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that price.
Yeah.
And like for follow-up stuff, if I need to change something small, I'll go into WordPress and do it myself. But if it's like structural, I will ask them to do it, and they charge like a very reasonable rate. I usually pay like $60 or $100 to like totally redo a page. So it's very very cost effective.
Awesome. Has there been any cadence or consistency that you found? And I feel like there is none in business. I don't know if you have any, Nick, from doing a little bit longer, but in terms of creating, in terms of level of traction, or maybe like how many meetings you're getting, even if not if anybody's coming through, or does it just seem to be completely random?
That's a tricky one. I think it's more on the random side. It's feast or famine for me. So last year I went through a dry spell of like I didn't pick up a new client for 6 months, and I was having prospect meetings, but I was really kind of fumbling at the sales process. I'd never had sales training in my entire life, so I decided to bite the bullet and get some sales training, and actually went through Nancy Blakey, Genuine Sales. She's got a course. It was a significant investment, but improved my close rate substantially, improved it from virtually zero. So, how to structure the sales meeting, kind of how to work collaboratively with the buyer to land on a solution that works for them. Highly recommend that service, but or her course in general. But yeah, that helped me a lot. But even after that, it was even after that, it was it still comes in surges, right? Like I'll get some people that are interested, like I'll get, hey, 3 new clients in 2 weeks, and then I have to push onboarding out a little bit for some of them, and then it'll be crickets for a couple months. So I think that's pretty common. Is that your experience, Ryan?
Oh yeah, yeah. Business is always annoying. It's never consistent, right? One client a month, just on board, solid plan, just keep it rolling.
Yeah, that'd
Solid
be
growth
nice.
of whether it's fees or AUM, doesn't matter as long as we're just riding. But it's not like that. It's like desert, and then it's waterfall, I feel like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just have to, I guess, deal with it. But it is interesting. What I found is that I haven't been able to see, I mean, over a period of time, maybe I'm starting to get the ebbs and flows a little bit. For example, a little bit dead over the summer, especially everybody getting back to summer. I feel like if you have current clients, maybe they're asking questions, but probably not as much onboarding, vacations, pure focus somewhere else.
Yeah.
Then I think when it gets back in the swing of things, the kids are out of the house, the mind starts to clarify, everybody gets a little bit back. So maybe like August, September is a little bit dead. September picks up a little bit. But by all means, there's some days when I'm like, can't figure out why like Monday through Wednesday is dead, and then Thursday and Friday is like 8 appointments. But
Yeah.
something's going on in the world where everybody has decided that that's a good moment. So I haven't been able to, I guess, predict those. But I think that's the important of or the annoyance of marketing, but the importance of consistency. And why we always say that is because there are people sitting in the background waiting to make a decision, but they're too stressed right now or too busy. Their mental capacity is too full. They can't physically move forward. They can't do something about it right now, but they're going to watch your post. They're going to read about it. They're going to think about it. And then 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 years after you talk to somebody, I've dealt with that plenty of times too. You meet with somebody 2.5 years ago, and then they go, hey, by the way, I'm retiring. You go, thought they were going to retire in 6 months. They retired 2 years. Just people are people. So it has been, I think we can only control what we control, which is why I love what you've been doing with your consistency. And I've noticed it's been every couple days. Do you make sure that it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Is there any specific cadence that you have or that you make sure that you stick to?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I think the biggest thing is consistency, like however the algorithm works. I think it favors consistency. So again, I try to do those three times a week posts, scheduled in advance, right? But there's a lot of people out there that say like, oh, you got to be posting every single day for 90 days. And I'm like, okay, I don't have time for that, right? Like I got kids, I had a full-time job. I can't be writing posts every single day. But yeah, 3 times a week at least. And, generating ideas for that 3 times a week, it gets, I feel like at some point there's going to be writer's block. There's just, you get tired of writing. It's not a sin to go back and repurpose content. So I've recently started doing that. I go back a year and say like, okay, what did I write about a year ago? What did like moderately well? Maybe I'll change a few words, but I'll just repost it. And it takes me like 5 minutes, right? So that's been a really good thing, is kind of like giving myself permission to recycle content, at least content that was quality. So I'm getting to that point where going back a year and pulling it forward is fine. And nobody remembers, right? Like everybody's got their own life. They're not going to say like, hey, you posted that a year ago. This is crap. So definitely don't poo-poo on that.
For sure. Yeah. And I think just like you were saying too, going through sales training, you talk to more clients, you have more experience, your writing gets better. So when you repurpose, maybe something that had like a little bit of spark, does a lot better, becomes a little bit more of a fire because you get out the fluff. You
Yeah.
added a picture to it,
Yeah.
because it had one element and now it has two. So there's a lot of little things I think that come along with that. Definitely a huge fan of repurposing content.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Spark. One of the biggest things that I've learned over time is like how to write a better hook. Because it's always about the first line, right? Like you just need to get people reading past the first line. And I think Nick pointed out, I had one where I was comparing whole life insurance to OxyContin.
Yeah.
And that one had mixed reviews. I think there was some people that didn't really like the comparison, but it got a lot of people reading it. So I guess it did its job.
I mean, speaking of OxyContin, that was Rush Limbaugh. Half of his audience hated his guts, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
That's the other thing. I find that if you're making people angry, there's probably also somebody in the background who really, really agrees with you. It means you've chosen a side and somebody's going to agree with that side, but not want to post about it. Most likely, though, I feel that people disagree and feel more angry. So it's a lot easier to maybe post or disagree than somebody to be like, usually I feel like the negative comes in the comments, the positive comes in the messages.
Yeah.
Hey, I noticed everybody was shitting all over you, but I really liked what you said. And just want to say that quietly so nobody yelled at me too. But yeah, it does. I think there is a sense of bravery or confidence that comes with marketing. Have you found any other posts or any other lines in the sand that you've drawn that have pissed people off or made people think a little bit differently? Got some negative comments?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest ones. I always kind of trash on the dumpster fire portfolio as I talk about it, or other people call it a Frankenstein portfolio, where a new client comes over and they've got 20 ETFs and like half of them are overlapping and half of them are high fee, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take that portfolio and I'm going to plug it into Portfolio Visualizer, and I'm going to show you that I can replicate the exact result with 3 ETFs. So begs the question, why the unnecessary complexity here, right? So I think it's a lot of times it's manufactured complexity for job security. But I post basically like what I just shared, and oh, by the way, this other portfolio is 6 times as expensive as the simple ETF one. And then of course people who put together who prefer those types of portfolios will comment and disagree with me, but a lot of times that gets a lot of engagement, so gets a lot of traction as far as the impressions and the views and things like that. So that's been another kind of hot button topic, I would say.
Yeah, I remember a post I made. Oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, so Nick had another question I wanted to say as we getting toward the end. If Brent or Paul wanted to jump in, I want to give them a chance to. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I was saying I made a post. Man, I can't remember. It must have been 2 years ago now, possibly. But I made a post joking about I was doing all the financial planning. Like my wife didn't know where all the numbers are. She's just not a numbers person. and just displayed it like that. In the comments, I had a mixture of advisors who I think knew me pretty well, but some, I don't know if you remember this, Nick, but I actually reached out to you about this post and being like, was that bad? Was that a bad post? Did I like say something wrong? Because some people were like, oh, it's offensive to women. And then some people were like, yeah, my spouse doesn't know shit either. So I was like, it was more of a spouse thing than a gender thing. And it came off. I actually had a message from somebody. I was doing MCO at the time. Stopped working with us before then, which I didn't care. They sucked anyway, but they still were like, they were like, hey, I just wanted to let you know somebody read your post and they were really offended. It was a friend of mine. And they were like, they never work with you after reading something like that. I was like, man, this is a really intense message. But but I was like, it's not, but I had good intention going into it. So I wasn't trying to hurt anybody by any means. And I wasn't trying to poke a bear by any means. But sometimes that happens online. So that's why I think I come back to that bravery. That was just a little bit of personality and a little bit of whatever. I think if you knew me, that made more sense. If you didn't know me very well, it could be offensive. But I'm comfortable posting that stuff now.
Right,
and I
Ryan,
feel
I'm with you. I remember the call. My wife has nothing to do with the financial stuff whatsoever. I just pulled this out of the top drawer of my desk. These are all of my accounts, like life insurance, who to call. Like it's basically her one-page game plan when I die.
I just saw Nick's social. No,
yeah. zoom in, please. But this is all my life insurance policies, our buy sell stuff for the business, disability policy. Like, so we have it in like 6 rooms of the house. Just one page.
Is it behind like an emergency glass? Like break this glass?
Yeah, break glass in case of emergency. Like she doesn't want anything to do with it, and that's okay.
Right.
It's better if both husband and wife know what's going on. That would be more ideal, but it's people's lives. It's their choice. Like we can't make a choice for them. As long as there's communication about what to do if something happens, that's the main thing.
There's 2 sides of the coin though. When you're hooked up to a machine someday, it might make it easier to pull the plug. She's like, oh, I got this shit. I'm covered. I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, at least you can call all the life insurance places, make sure the policies are still in force. Alan, don't worry the term. Alan, are you using Elements?
Good question. So I started using Elements like maybe 6 weeks ago. So I've done a couple of scorecard reviews for like Loom videos for people just as part of the prospecting process. I've actually got my first client using it next week. So we're going to go over it and I'll explain kind of what all the metrics mean and things like that. So yeah, it's really an experiment for me. I'm not, I haven't really drank the Kool-Aid fully, but it seems like an interesting tool and I figured I'd give it a shot for a year.
Yeah. I like Reese. Reese is a good dude. It just came across as maybe a little bit too complex for how I communicate with clients, but I would be interested to hear your feedback once you've used it for like a year or something like that. I think it's cool. I'm always concerned about things that have a lot of APIs and stuff too, because those seem to break and cause headaches. And then my last question for you, are you a DFA Kool-Aid drinker as well?
Yeah, I drank the DFA Kool-Aid
Awesome.
pretty early on in my practice. I launched
You don't have to say both. It's those aren't mutually exclusive. It's Kool-Aid comes along with the package. Sorry, Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love DFA. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I went to their 2-day thing in Austin, like very skeptical. I'm naturally skeptical of active management, but their research is sound and they've got it together and it's, the tracking error is low, right? So the downside is like, you're not going to get half the returns of the index, right? You're like, if anything, it's going to be a little bit one way or the other, I think.
I mean, my take, not to get into that tangent, but it's just kind of goes to, if you're going to offend people, or it's just pick a lane, right? If my rebalancing strategy is every March, it's like, why? Well, because that's what it is. It's better than not having one, or like you said, Frankenstein portfolios. Picking a lane is the key, and something you believe in obviously makes it all the easier to implement.
Yeah.
And the story is so incredibly easy. And in the words of the great late Denny Green, they are who we thought they are. I mean, the portfolios do exactly what they say they're going to do. And like based on what's going on in the world, when they're going to probably outperform a little bit, when they're going to underperform a little bit. But like you said, their history is really good.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
it's good when
yeah.
everybody's trying to copy them now, right?
Yeah.
You have all of the spin-off companies that are trying to replicate DFA. Alan, I think your stuff is awesome, man. I just wanted to say real quick, like, keep doing it. I think you are one of like the superstars in the business. I don't think you give yourself enough credit for your writing style. I think it's really, really good. I think it's easy to read. And you talked a little bit about the lumpiness of the business today. Like, if you just keep at it, people that are reading your stuff today are going to become clients 2 years from now, and 2.5 years from now, and 3 years from now. And all of the lumpiness goes away and it's going to get smoothed out. I think LinkedIn is a horrific platform. People really aren't there to get educated or entertained. They're there to do other shady dealings. But while you're there, you can potentially stop the scroll, and you'll have a life-changing business if you just continue to do what you're doing. You'll get millions and millions of dollars from LinkedIn. So keep at it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate those words of encouragement. You're one of my favorite internet friends, Nick. So always enjoy watching your stuff get posted, and
nice to see you in person.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's been awesome. That's the whole reason I reached out, Alan, besides just, love seeing your content. Felt like you've been adding on layers to it as well. From the article, broken down really well, graphics in between. I mean, I was looking at it. I was like, this is a well-written article, well read, easy to scroll through, understand the highlights. Even if people aren't reading every word, like, the impact I think that you've been doing has been making. So same with Nick's encouragement to keep going. And if I will end with one thing, even if we take it a minute over, I'm sorry, John, I wanted to actually ask you something, Nick. It seemed like your content has changed just a little bit, maybe a little bit more high level, bigger points, kind of showing your like pictures and images and things like that. Have you found that that's where your style has gone recently? Has it created better results? Like, what happened in your practice that took you from like writing bond pictures to creating kind of bullet points?
Yeah, I think the pictures worked really well, in the old days, 2019, 2020. But I'm not that good of an artist. And I think the river has flown past that point of time. And I think things have to look more professional and more elevated to catch people's attention, where it's not going to look like a third grader did it. So, the blue ocean opportunity was 2019, 2020 on LinkedIn, right? I mean, that was the holy grail of, being an advisor using LinkedIn. I mean, there's just like reaching in and just grabbing fish. Today, I think everything has to be elevated. And that's why I've made that pivot to not look like a third grader.
You feel like it's been helping? Do you get any feedback from clients about whether they like it or not? Or is this just your perception of your own content?
It's just my perception and kind of seeing what I think works and what doesn't. But, business has never been better. And I think part of that might be the pivot. I think part of that is just the compounding effects of showing up every day. I do not think I'm a unique or beautiful butterfly, but I do think that I've shown up more than probably 99% of other people.
What I think also that I felt is, before, I think you were so impressive to us as well because you were teaching advisors, because you went so deep. I think now that you've gone higher level, you're stopping people and meeting them where they are. And obviously you can always get into the weeds and you'll have a few of those posts, but I think that would be the big difference too, is like, if I was learning something, maybe somebody else was confused, or they read it and they were like, okay, that's something I should be thinking about, but I can't resonate enough with that to reach out to Nick and understand like what that means for me. Versus obviously your consistency, all that stuff. I always liked it and always, thought it was great, but maybe that's the switch. I've been thinking about that myself, is maybe I'm getting too deep and it should be, people think very high level. I mean, they don't know what they don't know. So they're just thinking about their problems, like what's on fire and what do I need to put out?
Yeah. I mean, I think, to use another oxyism, like, people have pain and they want something to quench the pain. And sometimes we talk about those pain points that we know people have, and sometimes we create the pain points that people don't know they have. And I think sometimes just keeping it simple, highlight a pain point, potentially how it can be solved, right? I mean, I think simple is better than complex, if possible. And then just kind of keep it moving. And I think that's one of, I think two big takeaways is you write down all the questions that client asks you. I have a very complex system. It's one of these 99-cent notebooks from Walgreens. I try to pick up a free pen somewhere if I can. Thank you, CLTC. And I mean, that's my, so when clients ask questions, they have a pain point, try to regurgitate it into some short post. And then number two is the reality is that people aren't there to see me or to see any of us. They're there to do shady things and interact with recruiters. And if they're at Raytheon, they want to send a DM to someone at Lockheed to figure out about what their compensation is. And yeah, while they're doing their DMs on LinkedIn, they might scroll a little bit and you might do something to catch their eye. But no one wakes up thinking, man, I can't wait to scroll on LinkedIn. This is a killer platform. Like, it's the worst social platform on earth. It's terrible, but people are there for other stuff.
It's so true.
It's
It is
getting
terrible.
worse by the day.
A dude at LinkedIn told me that 80% of all content on LinkedIn, 80% is from people in the financial services industry.
Really? I thought 80% was LinkedIn coaches, but and then
They might, I don't know. They might.
Wow.
Here.
Wait,
Well,
what
remix.
happened there?
the audio was, I'm gonna unmute you, but the audio was repeating. Everybody else heard it.
What the heck is that?
Now I wonder if Brent's a real person.
We're
Or
getting
like
passed by
a really
LinkedIn.
bad like bot.
That LinkedIn's AI is feeling us out.
I mean, I've watched Ex Machina enough time to be really scared about Brent now. I don't know if anybody else has seen that movie, but he might be like the male version of Ava.
that was
Now I gotta
weird.
go watch a movie just to grab a reference.
Yeah.
All right, I got it. Now I got a busy day.
My only talent of the whole meeting. Anyway, thanks for joining, Brent. Yeah.
That's right. Alan, appreciate it very much in terms of, sharing what you've been learning, how it's been going. And, just like Nick said, obviously keep it going. We'll follow up with this. Any conversations, any questions you guys have, Brent, Paul, obviously Nick, keep it going in the group. We're happy to keep discussing here, but most of the high level stuff I think we knew, but I really appreciate you sharing stuff on like Salesforce, some of the other things that you can use, all those things, actually actionable steps. I think that really helps. Otherwise, I'm going to head out, give everybody the rest of their day back. Any final questions or thoughts anybody wants to throw out? Maybe Brent.
Alan, don't be afraid to join the group. I think there's a free 30-day trial, and I don't know, try to get a discount from Chipotle. Can we get a discount code, John? You got to work on that. Give me a Chipotle discount code.
We don't have this officially set yet, but we're doing more for people who are willing to be a guest. So anyway, Alan, if you're up for checking out the group, we're going to post the replay, obviously, have some takeaways we'll put in there. But there's so many spin-off discussions and conversations that come from this. Like Nick was saying, like we want to hear how Elements is working out and a lot of different things. So hopefully the conversation will continue. I mean, that's like there's so many veins going on. If you got a minute when we're done here, Alan, I'll show you what this thing looks like. But
Yeah,
really
let's I appreciate the invitation. We'll catch up on that a little bit later. But definitely interested in checking it out. And if you guys have any other follow-up questions, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'm an open book, so happy to share anything I can.
Thank you so much for jumping in.
All right.
And if you
thanks,
join
guys.
today, Nick and I get compensated. So if you could just
no,
not by me.
no, just kidding.
I don't know,
Just kidding. This was actually,
I don't know, something.
This actually isn't being hosted anywhere. This was a 50-minute sales pitch.
Nice.
No, I'm just kidding.
Chipotle.
No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate everything. And again, he's been cool about it, to reach out to him directly if you guys have any questions.
Awesome.
Have a good day, everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.
You got it.